And we do have some new, like, how do you make Django work in a little bit more, how do you make it do something a little bit more useful than just put out a kind of a hello world type of message? And so we're going to be actually today, of course, making a hello world type of message on our screen. But also, we're going to be working with the database itself, and so that's really where that's actually why we're talking about Django with such tenacity, because Django does have this built-in database capability, which I think you'll find is really remarkable. It's going to be really, and it's a really easy to use database system for websites. And as the comment was this morning when I just came in, one of our colleagues here said that one of the databases that was being used by in Britain, for instance, to keep track of corona cases was written in Excel, and that basically fell apart because it wasn't designed. Excel documents are not necessarily designed to keep track of the data. So you really need a database to keep track of data. And so while you can get by with using a spreadsheet, you can. I mean, that's nothing wrong. People do that. But if you have like massive amounts of information, then after a while, your spreadsheet's just, it's one file. And one thing about files, when you're working with files, is that only one person can perhaps save to that file at a time. Then they have to, it's basically like a library system where they have to check out the file, write their changes, and then check it back in, and then the next person can see those changes. Unless they're using something like Google Docs, which is multiple people can work on these documents at the same time. But what we're talking about, though, is we're getting to like bigger, more robust applications of databases where this database can be used. Well, multiple people can log into. They can log into in Django. Multiple people can log into SQL and get information out of it. But I think that only the admin for this particular setup, only the admin can actually make changes. But we will pivot later on to a new database as soon as this is finished, called Mongo. And in fact, if you go to your planning your time, I'm thinking that we're going to do away with XML, although if you're interested, I can still give you the notes for that. But I'm thinking that we might jump to 11 or week 11 here, where we will start talking about MongoDB. And MongoDB is actually a much more robust database than SQL. And I think that it will really blow your hair back to see how much you can do with Mongo. I mean, if you think that SQL is cool, wait until you see Mongo. It's just like, wait until you see this. It's just, yeah. Okay, so go ahead and pull up your class docs repository, find your slides. By the way, one more thing I'd like to say is that if you do miss class, and I know that some people are wondering where they can pick up the videos for class, I do try and keep these fairly regular, although sometimes there's always a problem where I don't have it, I can't put every file up there because of certain kinds of problems which happen, and I'm prevented from putting up my videos just yet, but I will eventually put everything up. You can find the videos on the YouTube channel for this class, which is right here on the link. You can find that on our site. And so you can find the videos here. I do apologize, by the way, for Friday's class. I wasn't able to be here because I had a burst pipe in my bathroom, which was just disgusting. And so that was my big activity on Thursday night. We all began noticing this strange dripping sound, and I thought, that's funny. That sounds like a burst pipe. And it was. So we had to have that fixed. And so that's why I wasn't able to be on. I do hope that you were able to get some rest and relaxation there, though. I mean, it's very important that you do get your rest. Okay, so where are we now then? We are talking about this system, Django. I'm going to go ahead and get started with, I think I'll just start from the steps all over from the very beginning, and then whatever we don't get covered today, I will pick up on Wednesday. Let me just go ahead and get my bash on the screen here so that you can see what I'm typing all this stuff in. It's actually very important, though, that you know how to use these commands, because the commands are going to save you a bunch of time. The reason why we like these commands primarily is because in the old days, if you wanted to set up a server for some kind of networking, or sorry, to create a system in which you could attach an online system in which you could use a database. Much of this programming was all done all by yourself, and so don't forget. Oops. git pull, do that. And now I'm going to go to, in fact, I think I was working here, but I think that has probably gone away in my directory. So I'll make another one here, Django project. I'm going to make my directory. I'll go in there. We're going to start everything all over again, so that in case you you lost track of where we were last time, this is your opportunity to kind of pick up the pieces and see where this will be to do. Now, the first thing that we want to do is if we go back to our slides, you have some information about how to get started. I'm assuming that everyone here has already installed their virtual environment. If you haven't, you have the slides tell you how to do that. I'm actually using this down here because I think that this is actually easier for me. I'm using this particular way of installing my virtual environment. This seems to be easier. I think that on my particular version of Python, it came with this. I don't think I had to install anything, and so it just came with this Python 3 minus m env, and then I was able to just go ahead and run my environment this way. And so anyway, when I type in ls minus l, I have my files, and this is my environment that I'm going to use. In other words, this is my workspace that I'm going to be using to create my thing. Now, remember what you have to do is, if you look at the files inside this, you'll find that there's a directory here called bin. And if you look inside bin, you'll see that there's this file here called activate. Now, on a Mac and on Linux, you have to type in source. You have to go into your environment, go into bin, and you type in activate. And then once that's been done by typing source, you don't do that on Windows, by the way, but once you've done this on Mac, where you typed in source, this command here, then you see down in the bottom corner that little tag, if you will, that tells you that you're now inside your special environment. Now, if you're using Windows, then Windows, I have some slides, and I'm hoping that these will work the same. You don't need you don't need to use source, but rather you just have to go into this directory as like this after you've actually installed these virtual environment things. You've done this command here, then you should be able to get the same files that I had. And if you go into the directory that you've created, this is my environment, which is created here, my environment. If you go inside this directory and you type in activate, then you should be able to start your environment. And so in other words, you're right here, and you have, so you should be able to see this directory, or next to your directory, you should be able to see that you're inside your environment. Now, if that isn't the case, please let me know. I haven't checked this. I mean, I don't have a Windows machine on me right now to check that, but I'm thinking that it is that case. So if that's not the case. Now, going back to the slides, we're going to look at some of the other things. We're going to go to actually start creating our Django. Now, one thing I should say is that when you're inside your virtual environment, when you create a new virtual environment, you have to fill it up with the stuff that you need to work with. So in other words, inside our virtual environments, where are we? Here we are. We have to actually install Django inside there. So even though you may have Django already installed on your machine, that doesn't mean that it's going to be installed in that environment. And so I'm going to go ahead, type an ls, and outside this directory here, and I will type in my pip install Django. In fact, I wonder what. And when I do this, this is actually installing this particular copy of Django inside my virtual environment. It's not anywhere else, but it's just inside the virtual environment, which allows me now to use my virtual. I can use Django inside my virtual environment. Now, once I'm inside, I can go back to my slides, and there's a command that I'd like to show you. I think you've seen this many times. You can find out what the version is of your somewhere. Here we go. You can find out what the version is of your particular version of Django. Let's copy everything there. But if I just go back here and I just type in this command, my line here, I type Python. I don't need to type in Python 3 anymore because I'm actually inside my environment. And so that means that Python now is the Python 3. If I just type in Python here, then I'm already in Python 3. And that's because I'm inside my environment. But if I were not inside my environment, I would have to type in Python 3. But that's just my installation. That may not be your installation. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, then don't worry about that. Okay, so then next we need to actually create the Django project. I'll just copy this so you can see what I'm doing. But when I go back to my script here, or my terminal, remember that I'm actually outside of my environment. I'm going to just create this my site right here. And by pasting that in there and just pushing enter, I get this directory. Maybe my site isn't the best name for this. You can use any name you'd like. In other words, all you need to do is just change this here. But remember, though, that once you've changed that, you need to make sure that all your files are saved as such. And if they're a my site file, then they have to be saved in whatever you called my site. If it's a music file, as we'll make today, we're going to make a directory that we'll make an app that keeps track of music. Then those things will have to be in there. Okay. I don't want to make you feel like I'm hurrying you through this, but we have gone through these steps before, and so if I am going too quickly, then please say something. And all right, so now I'm going back to my slides, and so the next thing we need to do is we need to use this command here called manage run server. Oh no, sorry, before that, sorry. No, we've done that. So actually now we can run this over here, and so that suggests that our project is created, and we don't have to worry about anything else. So I'm going to go into my site, sorry about it, and then we type in ls, giving you a listing of files. You'll find this file here called manage, and that is like your central coordinator for the whole database. That's what the admin will use. So when I type in run server, you will get some error messages, but the server is running. This is what you should see, just very, very basic, boring stuff, nothing too incredible is happening. Now, let me just go back and show you that it is actually running. And so if I click on my tab here, it should say install worked successfully, congratulations. That is your bare bones site. That means that everything now is running. We haven't customized anything. We haven't done anything to it. We've just used essentially the wizard that comes with Django. And that's really what a wizard is. It's like it puts the code in place for you. You don't have to worry about you don't have to worry about configuring everything at a very basic level here. It kind of just does all that configuration for you. Oops. So where am I? Oh, here we go. I don't mean to confuse you guys or to make you feel dizzy by me flipping from slide to slide like this. I am sorry. But these are the steps. In fact, if you're putting together your own project, I'd recommend just like finding these initial steps here and just following these commands one after the next, and make sure that they are actually working before you move on to the next command. Okay, good. Hopefully everybody's system has worked out. There was no trouble at all. But if that's not the case, then what I can recommend is to just sit through this, if you would, and then go back after class and like just check your commands here, make sure that they're actually working. Like run this command here, and then go back to this terminal, and then make sure that they're actually running. One thing I'll show you though is that I'll show you the terminal here, and right now what I'm doing is I'm clicking the refresh button on my page here. So you can see that when I click refresh, then I get this feedback that happens on my terminal. So what's going on there? I'm just clicking on this button. I can't really see what I'm doing here, but I'm just refreshing this, and that's it. Nothing too crazy is going on. But really, what that means is that I'm looking at. I can see, for instance, from this activity here, I can get an idea about what my website is doing, what it's serving. And over here, what this means is get HTTP 1.1. That just means refresh. And then over here, for instance, you can see kind of like what the different types of other files are being run here. This is like the font. These are all files you'd use. We don't really worry about this in this class. If this were a web development class, then we would care. But what this over here is saying is that I'm just formatting the fonts to make the web page look pretty. And that's all that is. Okay, so let's go back to this. Now, when we okay, now we're ready to add some actual functionality. And by the way, we're not just going to have a simple hello world thing. we're actually going to engage the database. And so the code that we look at today is going to be a little bit confusing, but don't worry about the confusing part here. I have provided for you some files in your sandbox. You can see a working project that you can see the configuration files. I know that those files work. I've configured them myself. But don't look at those files just yet. Try and follow through with this because well, this is where you're going to see how everything works together. But you can use the files, the configuration files, and the project, how those files were written, to see whether your files are on task. But don't just go ahead and don't run that other thing just yet. Stick with me on this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a music app. It's really just a database which is going to keep track of albums, songs, and I think an album cover. Nothing ordinary. So this is a new command here. What we need to do is we need to actually create what's called an app. And we've seen this before, but an app, remember, is an extension of the website which does something. It does something. So I'm going to go back here, and here I am. I'm going to go ahead and hit Control-C. I'm going to get out of this thing, so now I'm out. It's over and done with. I'm going to type in ls, and I'm going to type in this command right here. Again, we're using manage to work with our code. And I'm going to use this new parameter called start app and music. And what this is going to do is, much like how we created the actual server using commands, we're going to make another kind of a sub-server that just handles music. And so what I mean by that is that your web server is going to take in anyone who comes to your website looking for music. They're going to be passed along by your gatekeeper of the website to this group of files here called music, where it's going to keep track of the music interests of the database and the website. So we've just created, using this command here, this other directory, and that is a part of the website that actually music. In fact, if you go into this music area here, you can see that there's a bunch of files which are very similar to the files that we've already worked with. But today we're going to be working with this models and views, and that's it. That's more configurations, but anyway, not get ahead of ourselves. So I'll go back over here, and we've just run this command here. You can see that new files have shown up. And that's where you can, this command here, you can always type in. This is a Linux command, by the way, or a Unix command. And so if you're working inside your Docker container, then this command will work. Otherwise, I think that in Windows, if you type in dir/, let's see. Didn't come with a database. That's okay. That's okay. I think that, so the thing is, if I type in music, you mean? Now you won't see a database in music, but you'll see the database in your main sites. Actually, where is that? Actually, maybe you won't. Oh, it should be in the. It should be here in this. In mine's. It's this. That's your database. You don't have one there. Wes, do you have a database in there? You do. Well, Alexander, stick with me on this. I think that maybe it could be still created. Since this file is, this is your database, it's empty. You could do that too. So if you try the run server, then yeah, try that right now, let me know. So for those, for viewers at home, if your database didn't show up, in other words, if you didn't get a file that's called db.sql3, SQLite3, try running run server or Python manage run server, and that may do it. Let me know if it comes up. Otherwise, it's an empty file, so I'm thinking that there must be some system that would actually create that file if it were not there at the time. But what I'm talking about, it does it. So run server so did create the file. So okay, good. So here's the moral of the story then is if you're running your files here, and you do not see this file here, that's your database. It'll be empty. That means you can see that the file actually has like 0 bytes after it, right here. Mine is completely empty. There's nothing there. In fact, I can always type in SQLite3 followed by DB. I have to be very careful you don't save anything here. But if I type in tables here, you'll see that there's nothing in there. And that makes sense because the file has 0 bytes. So it's empty. It's a suitcase, which is empty. So what we're going to do now is we're going to work toward filling that up with some basic stuff. And so that's really where today's class picks up. Right, okay, so now what we're going to do is, oh, by the way, these are some files that we're going to be working with. Apps, models. Actually, maybe I don't think we have to worry about apps so much. Maybe later, but I don't think that today we have to worry about tests. And again, not for today, but the apps Python or .py file is like your main file. It's like what people will. It's like the manager for your music app. I guess you can call it your music, the music arm of your website. Models is actually more particular to us. Models is actually a very interesting file, and that is that. Remember how we've been creating schemas for our SQL databases? Schema that talks about like the tables and it creates the data structures and everything. Models.py creates that schema. And so that is perhaps the link to this, to why we're using Django in this course, because models creates a schema, which is then going to be used to create our database. And in that database, we can start storing information about records, music, even like administrator information, users to our website. Seemingly anything that we want, we can store in our database. But that all gets set up by this file here. So that's a rather important file. We have this test.py file, which I don't think we need to worry about right now, but it's just for adding tests. Make sure that the project is working correctly. If you're using something like PyTest, for instance, on your project in Python, you can use this to help you to create better code. Views, that's that file that we worked with last time in class, where we were working to create basically it's a file that sent out information to the viewers when they logged into our website. And so that's like what they call the request handler. That means that when someone types in the URL to our website, the website says, welcome to our website and welcome to the my site. That information is going to be controlled by views. What the viewer sees, what the viewer views is created by the views Python. All of these files will be second nature to you very, very soon. So the next thing we need to do is to create some additions in our file my site URLs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and this is probably going to be a bunch of editing on my part. So just bear with me. Let me just go back to let me get my editor up and going. You can see this. I'll try and get this text to be a little bit bigger. One thing I'm going to do is to, you can't see what I'm doing here. Actually, see that. You can't see what I'm doing. There we go. Got my thing. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create in my, I'm using this atom here, but I'm going to go to File, Add Project Folder, and I'm going to add a project folder, which is exactly where I'm working with my stuff. You can't see what I'm doing, but just a moment here. Let me just get this going here. I'm going to my Django proj for my Python folder, and you can see that's where I'm. It's not very clear. I do apologize for the lack of clarity here. I wonder if I can change things. Guys, let me do something about this 22. Made bigger, not. Make this. I guess I can change the size of this. More easy to read. Well, okay. Well, I'll just have to leave it. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go. Hopefully, you can all see if I. There must be a way of getting this. I'm just trying to make a bigger. I'm just kind of trying to blow up the app a bit so that everyone can see what it is I'm doing. Otherwise, it's a bit difficult to read as it is. I don't think that there's any. I can change the size of the menu. I'll have to look into that. I think it must be possible.
Try Command Plus. It might zoom it more.
Command plus. All right, let's do this. So let's see, Command plus. There we go. That's it. But I was hoping that I could like make my files on the left-hand side a little bit more readable. But I'll use that though. Thank you very much thank you for that. That's very helpful. Okay, good. So I've got that bit bigger. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to let's see, what's my file I'm working with? I'm working with the my site URL file. So if I go back to here and I click on my site, do that. I'm going to pick out here we are, my site. I have to go in there again. And this is the file that I want. Whoa, that's a huge file. I can just remove all that information and then I can put this information. Maybe I should make it a bit smaller so it fits in the page. Now, one thing that I do have to do is that I have to kind of format things a bit. Hang on a second. Let me just make sure that this is looking good. I'm going back to the slides and making sure that the slides actually kind of guide my edits so that it does look like what it should be. So I have this URL patterns. I'll drop a line after that. Then I'm going to go here and then I can drop that. And so it should be. I don't know why this is. There we go. It should be this. And so this is part of the reason why it is that I'm giving you the files already in your project, in a project that works. Although I'd like you to spend some time actually just playing around with these files here using the slides, because the slides are actually a very convenient way of putting together a project. They help you to remember what the supposed to go where. But this, I'm hoping, is going to be you have the files if you need them. See exactly how things are. So anyway, now I've just saved this file and everything's good to go. So now I can go back and see what's the next piece. I don't think we can run this just yet. In fact, I need to make sure that I have actually stopped my server, because otherwise, if I haven't stopped my server, then it's going to just crash. And the reason why it's going to crash, and we learned that on Wednesday last, and that is because when you are working with when you change some of these files, you have to change multiple files at the same time. You can't just change one, but you have to change a bunch of them, like 3 or 4 files at the same time. And then once all those files have been changed properly, then it's going to, then your changes are actually going to work. But if you don't do that, then it doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let's go back to the slides and see what it is that we're supposed to do next. I can find let's see. So I'm going to. We have to go to this file here called music. And music, remember, let me just tell you something. So this URL file here, that's when people log into your website, I'm just going back here. When people log into my website, my site, when they log into that as a website, this is the first file that meets. The user will then say, well, they don't say that, but the link that they typed in to get here will then tell or inform urls.py what it is that they want to do on the site. Now over here, we have some commands here. This means go to the administration page. This I've canceled out, which means I'm commenting that out. Don't need that anymore. And then we have down here, this is what the format looks like, r quote caret music. What this is saying is that when somebody comes in with a link that says music, then take them to this include music URL file. Okay, so where do we find music URL or URLs? Well, that's this file here. In other words, you're going to like if you go to a fancy hotel and you ask the concierge, I'm here for this conference, where do I go? And they'll say, well, what conference are you here for? And you say, well, I'm here for the science conference. Like, oh, sure. Go through that door and speak to that person in there, and they'll tell you where you're supposed to be. So then you go through that door and speak to that person over there. They say, hello, welcome to the computer science conference. How can I help you? And you say, well, I'm here to present a paper. And they say, oh, what paper are you presenting? You say, I'm here to present a paper on such and such. And I'll say, oh, well, then you're supposed to be in room 101. And so it's the same idea here, where this code that we see here is kind of directing people to where they're supposed to be on the website. So now what we need to do is to actually create that file. If you go to music, annoyingly, the music directory, when I'm right here, does not have a URLs file, which is just baffling. I need to put it in there. Any file would have been fine. Anything would be good to go. Let me just go ahead and save this first. I'm going to save this. I'm going to save as. I'm going to my project, my site. Then I'm going to go into music, and you'll see my changes in a second here. At urls.py. I say put save, and you'll see now that my file has. Oops, the file has shown up there. Now, the next thing that I need to do, and this is the crazy part, is I need to start editing my file here so that how I do this. I hit Control N on, or just made a new file, and then I saved it in the music in my site music directory. That's all it is. It's just this file here that you can see on this file. I don't know why they don't just give you a file. I mean, a file that's empty would be fine. I don't understand why they do this, but they don't. Alas. So now I'm just going to make sure that my code looks exactly like I see here. That's what that's all about here. So I'm just going back to make sure this code is exactly the same way as this code is here. Otherwise, it's not going to work, and that'll just be code. I'm going to put this down here. And here, hopefully that'll work. I'm getting concerned here. So now I've saved this file. You can see that there's no little blue dot up here any longer because it's been saved. If it hadn't been saved, then a blue dot would appear, and then I can hit Control S, and then it's gone. It's saved. Okay, so let me just go back and look at this for a second. So what this is doing now is it says here that when somebody comes into the music URL arm of the when I say arm, like the division of the site, then it means that if nothing has been typed in, and that's usually how it's going to work, people will just type in music. Music will then be or then in the link, music will then be sent to this file. This file will say to the user, "What are you here to do?" And this is going to have there's no information in here other than just music. It's blank basically. And so this will say, "Oh well, I guess there's nothing here for you other than just to show. I'll just show you this page that we have here, which is our index page." That's like your index HTML page. So really what it's doing is it's saying, since you have nothing else in the link to show me, I'll just send you to our basic, standard entry-level welcome page, our music site. And that's what this is all about here. This file over here, views, we've seen that views before. In fact, if I go back to here, remember we have views.py. So what this is saying is that it says, okay, views, this one's for you. Go ahead and help this person find an index page, and this is what the file is going to be called. Now I can configure all of this stuff from just this one line. And so views now handles the call where it gives out index. The name of the file is going to be called index. This index, that's going to be a function name inside views. Anyway, we'll talk. But really it's referring this user to the views file, go to the function called index, and that's. Yeah, remember though that this music URLs file does not exist. All this thing. Don't worry if you don't see it, don't worry about that. So now we go to the next file here called views. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy this. And you guessed it, I'm going to go back to my editor and I'm going to plant this file into views. And you can see the file is supposed to go to music views, which is, I know that because I've written it along the top of my slides. My site music views. So if I go here, I'm going to go to my site music views, and that's this file down here. I'm going to edit this file. I can remove some of this stuff. I probably don't need that there. Render, I can leave that there. I don't think I need that right this minute, but I'll leave it there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my function. And so it should be this. In fact, what I'm doing is I'm making sure that my code looks like this code here. One thing I am doing, though, which is a little bit different from, there's a tutorial, by the way, that I put in your sandbox. You can read, actually not your sandbox tutorial. You can read it if you want. That is, if you're using this in a more official capacity, then you might want to go through a tutorial. There's actually a very interesting project that you can create in that tutorial. But one thing that I'm doing here, though, is that I'm creating a string right here, and in that, this is just my string. It's a variable, and I'm putting this string in. I'm assigning the string to that variable, and then when somebody reads this views file here, or let me back up a second here. When somebody comes to my website and they type in music, and music's in their link, then it says, okay, take that person to views.index. That's this file here, or that's this function here. Views, we're in the views file, views index, and then it says, I'll just print this line to the screen, and that's really all this is. And so there's really nothing magical happening, right? It's just typing up a welcome statement. Now, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that this works and I didn't make any mistakes. I'm going to go back to my server here and type in Python manage run server. And if anything, of course, something terrible happened. I think that, okay, so there's a problem with my site. So I need to go back here. File here. The file is in my site. So it's going to be here. What have I done here? I think I may have to wonder. Let me go back to my notes for a moment here and see what I can do. So if I go back here and look at my, this is why I've given you the files so you can look at them if you're interested. In fact, I can show you those files look like. Maybe I'll just go ahead and grab that. I'll tell you what, I'm going to stop this. I'll just show you the files as you see them in your class docs. We go to my directory here. It says, oops. Class docs, lessons. We're at week 8 already, which is gracious. We're at sandbox. We're going to go into sandbox. What's inside here? Working project, my site, and then this URL. So my site again, URLs. So it's this file here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this as I see it here. In fact, you have these files. They're already inside your, oops, that's not that, but they're already inside your class docs repository. I'm just going to copy this. I'm sure that my formatting is gone off. If I go back to my this file at here, oh, I see my file. Well, whatever. I'll just remove it. That'll fix it here. I think that I'll just paste that in there and hopefully that'll do the trick. Now if I go back to transition, oops, not here. I go here, and I don't need to make everyone feel sick while I'm doing all this. Oh, goodness gracious. What does that mean now? I think maybe there's more work that I have to do. I think that maybe I haven't finished everything in my, let's go back to my slides and see whether there isn't something more that has to be done. And there probably is something that more needs to be done here. So we've done the music here. In fact, what I can do is I can check out my views, and I'm thinking that there probably has to be, well, we haven't done that just yet. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with my other file, just because I'm sure that I made a mistake in editing it somehow. But I'm going to pick up my, what is it here? Where's the file actually starting? Threading. Module object is not iterable. So instance, yeah. So there's a file, there's a problem with improperly configuring this, and I think that what I need to do, look at this file here. And of course, we've got that all done, so that's good enough. I'm gonna go to music. CD Oops. And if I type in this, what does this file look like here? I wonder whether there isn't some kind of error down here where it's getting kind of confused. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy across the file that I was working with before from music. I'll show you what happens here at work. Okay, that's, oops, you know what? Maybe copy this thing over. Did I do that properly? Okay, so that's over there. So it's, I'm concerned it's this indentation business over here that made it a real problem here. And then if I go to cd dot dot, let's check out the other one here, make sure that I actually copy this over properly. Oops. Okay, so that might work. Might work. Oops. And if I go to Python, manage, run server, there we are. So the trouble was, this is why I've given you the files. The trouble was that when I was editing the files from here, I was not guarding the spaces as exactly they should be, and that's one thing that makes teaching this particular thing very, very tricky for me. In fact, I'll tell you what it was. In fact, you can see it right now. Is that there is no, in fact, this is going to be another problem that we'll see, so that this file here needs to be indented, or that line needs to be indented, and you can't, it's difficult for me to indent things when I'm making slides because it just wants to align all the text on the left-hand side. And so, yeah, the indentations always work. I'll fix that and push this out again. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so the next thing is that so now we're working fine, I guess. The website seems to be okay. I'm going to go and just check out. I'll just hit. Yeah, I'll just click on this refresh. It's not going to work here because remember we've removed some code. But I think that if we type in music in our website address, then remember you have to type in music now. Then it will work. And so now we've knocked out some code for basic use of this whole thing, or generic use, as they call it. But actually now what we've done is we've created this this music app. We've given life to that. Now we don't have a whole bunch of time left in this thing. I'm just going through my notes, like 3 minutes. In this 3 minutes, I'm going to try and just establish this database just so you can see it. And then when we come back on Wednesday, we'll pick up from where we are here and see what we can do. Now, if this appears to be just overwhelmingly confusing, don't worry about this. I'm not going to give you a test where I'm asking you to actually create a project in Django, because I think even the best of us would have trouble actually creating this project. And so please just look at this as like a way of starting this up in the future if you need to make a project. I'm not going to test you or creating this stuff from scratch like this. You'll always have your notes. I'm not going to have to know these commands backwards. I don't think anyone actually in their right mind can know how these things all work, but without looking at their notes. Anyway, so we've created this site here that just says, you know, music apps website, blah blah blah, homepage. Okay, nothing crazy. But now we need to do some actual work with the databases. After all, this is a databases class. And so now I want to show you this file here called settings.py. So come with me, if you will, to my editor, and I'll show you, if I can find this. We're looking for this file here called settings in my site. And so it's not music, it's in my site. And so we have this file here called settings. And if you go through this, you'll see that there's a bunch of information here. Don't worry about the information you see. Don't worry about all this other stuff. You're only looking at one particular part of this file, which is this file, or this part right here, where it's called, you see, databases. And what databases is going to do is it's going to actually establish the connection between your project and the database. So when I go back to, these are my slides here. I have to go back to the part of my thing that says databases, wherever that is. I'm going down the file. It's right here. And actually, I think that this is all done automatically. Yes, this is all done automatically for you. And so you do not need to worry about actually establishing your database with your project. There's a command we have to type in that does it for us, but this code is done for us, which is actually very nice because when Django first came out, this code was not done. And so no matter what commands you typed in, you never got it to work, which drove me absolutely insane. So we're going to go back now. Actually, wait, before we do that, let's go back to our slides. and see what we can type in to make that happen. So anyway, but this is actually all the code is working. All we need to do now is just to create, actually to establish the code. So let me just show you one more thing here before I do this. When I type in run server, we're going to go after this line right here that says you have, oops, you can't see this. Sorry. Now, when I type in run server, I've done here, I'm running my server. You have this warning here that says you have 18 unapplied migrations. What that means is it says, I am a website and I have no way of remembering anything. That means that I have not established my database. More importantly, that means I have not established the schema of my. So now the next steps that we do are to actually establish that schema. You know what? Let me just run one file or one thing here and show you. Then we'll call it quits for today. I realize that we're over time. I'm gonna make you stay all this time here, but I do want to show you this one thing, and then when we come back, we will cover, go to the, we'll pick up from here. But this one command you need to worry about though is called migrate, and what that means is to actually take the database, take the data, or take the website and put them together, like actually connect them together. And that is what this command here does, Python manage migrate. And that allows you actually to, it allows the website to remember what's going on. Otherwise, remember that the website only remembers things when it's been written down in the database. And so now what this is doing is it's gone through and it's establishing tables for our website. Now, let me just show you something. If I can find this, just I know that we're really over time here. I'll just show you one thing. I'm going to use I'm going to use DB browser. You guys can all see this. This is that app that we used before, which is actually kind of cool. It allows you to open up files and to look into databases without having to type in commands, which I think is actually very, very handy here. When I go to, you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm loading the database. You can see these things, but I'm going after the file. I'm going to my Django project. I'm loading up my database, and I'm running this. And this is the content of the database that Django just built. This is why we're discussing this. If I click on my browse data, and you can always do this just typing SQLite 3, but you'll see that these are the tables which have just been created. And one thing that we're talking about now is that you're able now to remember stuff that happens. Now, we haven't actually populated anything in these tables. They're just tables sitting there. In fact, this table has something in it, but that Django needs. But you have the schema right here. Anyway, we're grossly over time. I do apologize for that. Thank you very, very much. I'm not going to remember that this is complicated stuff. And I don't want you to think that you have to know this for a test. We're not running this for a test. But I do want you to know this for your own information, because it's very likely that all of you will be hired in some amazing company, given some amazing opportunity where you're paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in a small salary as startup money for you, and you're able to make more money than that. And you'll be hired on the basis of being able to establish a Django project for them, create a database that's on the website. It had happened. One of the students in this class, actually, when I first taught this, actually was hired by a New York stock exchange firm to create a website in Django. They made $90,000. So anyway, it is important for me, though, to get this information out to you, and I want you to know how to use this. You have the notes here. I'm not going to make you do this on a test. I may make this lab. Anyway, though, everybody, we'll pick this up when we come back on Wednesday. Everyone stay safe. Thank you for logging in. Take care. Stay safe.